My sister Amanda never missed a chance to humiliate me. To her, I was the tragic little sister, with no husband, no kids, and no future. She called me a failure right in front of our family, loud enough that everyone could hear. But what she didn't know was that life has a twisted sense of humor, because 2 years later, she would stand across from me, resume in hand, begging for a job, and I was the CEO she had to face. If you've ever been underestimated or mocked by the ones closest to you, you'll want to hear this story. Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts, because sometimes karma arrives wearing a power suit. My name is Charlotte Miller. I'm 34, an engineer living in Boston, and the so-called failure of my family. At least that's what my older sister Amanda liked to tell everyone. Growing up, Amanda was always the star, the golden child with perfect grades, a popular circle of friends, and a life plan as polished as her designer heels. By the time she was 29, she'd climbed her way into an HR manager position at a major company, married a successful real estate agent, and posted endless pictures of her children on Facebook for all the relatives to admire. Me, I'd chosen a different path. I stayed single. I put my heart and soul into coding gadgets and systems that could change the world, or at least make it a little easier to live in. I had a nice apartment, a loyal cat named Shadow, and a dream that burned so bright it sometimes hurt. I wanted to build my own tech company. My parents were polite about my choices, supportive in that half-hearted, we hope you're okay kind of way. But Amanda, she was brutal. Every Thanksgiving, every family reunion, she would smile that perfect toothpaste ad smile and ask me in front of everyone, "So Charlotte's still alone? Still tinkering with those silly ideas?" And she'd laugh. The rest of the family would laugh too, in that awkward way that said they didn't really agree with her, but no one had the guts to stand up for me. I used to go home after those gatherings, pull my hoodie tight around my face, and cry into Shadow's fur. It wasn't that I was ashamed of my life. I was proud of it. But having your own sister tell the whole world you were a loser, it cut deep. Amanda always made sure to twist the knife, reminding me how I was running out of time to settle down, to have kids, to do something worthwhile. But while Amanda was busy climbing the corporate ladder, I was quietly planning something bigger. I had developed an app that could help seniors manage their medication schedules, a simple, user-friendly interface that reminded them their family and their doctors in real time, reducing mistakes and hospitalizations. I believed in it with every fiber of my being. I called it MedMind. Boston was a tough city to launch a startup, but I saved every penny, took side freelance gigs, and pitched my idea to anyone who would listen. I knew that what I was building could change lives. But to Amanda, it was just another silly dream. Amanda loved to play the role of my personal commentator. She'd say things like, "Oh, Charlotte's trying to be Steve Jobs now," followed by a fake sweet grin. She'd roll her eyes whenever I mentioned working on my code at 2 a.m. She'd even tell other people I was basically unemployed, even though I had a solid freelance income and a clear business plan. The worst was, when she gathered our extended family for a barbecue one summer. I just shared the news that I was starting to seek funding to get MedMind off the ground. I was proud, terrified, but proud, and I thought they'd encourage me. Instead, Amanda stood up with her plastic wine cup and toasted to my brave sister, who's about to set fire to her savings on a fantasy. Everyone laughed. That night, I went home shaking. Shadow crawled onto my lap and purred, reminding me there was still kindness in the world, even if it came with 4 paws and a tail. I couldn't let Amanda define me. I couldn't let her words sink me before I'd even begun. So, I pushed harder. I found a few mentors in the Boston startup ecosystem. I went to pitch events, worked on my prototype, refined the user interface, and tested the app with seniors in local community centers. Their feedback was incredible. They told me it gave them a sense of control, peace of mind, a chance to stay independent longer. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had found my purpose. My engineering skills weren't just a silly hobby. They were a way to help people. And no matter how many insults Amanda threw my way, I was determined to see MedMind succeed. My friends believed in me, even if my family didn't fully understand. My best friend, Tara, stayed up all night helping me rehearse my investor pitches. She'd order us cheap pizza, and we'd practice until we were hoarse. Tara was my rock, reminding me I was smart, capable, and deserving. Boston can be a harsh city in winter with gray skies and sidewalks lined with dirty snow. But somehow, that icy cold lit a fire in me. I would prove Amanda wrong, not to get revenge exactly, but to show myself and everyone else that I was so much more than the single sister with no future. It still hurt when Amanda's backhanded comments reached me. Even through family group chats, she'd slip in jabs. Any wedding news yet? Any real career news? She had no idea what was coming. No clue that I was building something that would one day change not only my life, but hers too. Because when you spend your whole life being labeled a failure, you start to gather a quiet, unbreakable strength. A strength Amanda would soon discover in the most unexpected way. I thought I was ready for the challenges of launching MedMind. I'd read the horror stories, founders sleeping on couches, living on ramen, pushing themselves until they crashed. But I still underestimated how hard it would be, especially when the people closest to me seemed determined to watch me fail. Amanda became my loudest, cruelest critic. When she learned I had emptied my savings to fund the first prototype, she nearly choked on her latte. "Charlotte, you really invested all your money. You don't even have a husband to bail you out." "If this goes wrong," she said, smirking in that ice-cold way of hers, it was humiliating. She started telling our relatives that I was burning through cash like a drunken college student, and that it was only a matter of time before I went bankrupt. She even told our parents I'd probably come crawling to live in their basement again when my cute little project fell apart. The problem was, Amanda's words had power. Our extended family listened to her. She was the one with the nice house, the kids, the husband. She was the one with the real job title. Suddenly, people who'd once been polite about my startup were calling to ask if I was okay, if I needed help finding a proper job. And then came the worst blow. She took it public. One night, as I was working on a funding pitch, I got a call from Tara. She was practically hyperventilating. "Charlotte, your sister just posted about you on Facebook," she blurted. My stomach dropped. Tara read it to me line by line. Amanda had written a long, gleeful rant about how I was wasting my life chasing a pipe dream, adding that I'd soon be bankrupt and alone. She even joked that if anyone had a spare couch, they should save it for me. And of course, she tagged half the family. I stared at my laptop screen, unable to breathe. My hands shook so hard I could barely move the cursor. She hadn't just embarrassed me in private, she had declared to the entire extended family and all of her friends that I was a pathetic failure. For days I couldn't focus. Every time I tried to rehearse my pitch or code another feature, I heard her words echoing in my head. I felt sick with shame. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was doomed. The next family gathering was even worse. We met for my parents' anniversary at a local restaurant. Amanda showed up in a power suit, perfect as ever, and made sure to talk extra loud. "So Charlotte," she said, swirling her wine, "how's the money pit going? Any investors dumb enough to buy in yet?" Everyone laughed. I wanted to sink under the table. I forced a smile, trying to act tough. But Amanda didn't stop. "You know, if you really need a job," she added sweetly, "my company is always hiring admin staff. It would be steady pay at least." My cheeks burned. The worst part was a few of my aunts actually nodded as if it was a generous offer. That night, I went home and sobbed harder than I had in years. Shadow curled up next to me purring, trying to comfort me, but even his warm weight on my lap couldn't fix how broken I felt. I had given everything to MedMind, my money, my energy, my heart, and Amanda had torn me down in front of everyone. The following week, I pitched to 3 potential investors. Every single one said no. They liked the product, but they didn't believe I could scale it. They doubted my leadership. And to be honest, after Amanda's attacks, I doubted myself too. I watched my runway, the last bit of funding I had to keep MedMind alive, shrink faster than I could replenish it. 2 months. That was all I had left before I'd be forced to shut it down. 2 months to prove that I wasn't the worthless screw-up my sister claimed. Late one night, I sat in the tiny office I'd rented, really just a dusty room above an old print shop, and stared at the balance sheet. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might burst. The numbers didn't lie. I would run out of cash. Amanda's voice played in my head on repeat. "You're nothing. You'll never make it." And maybe she was right. That night, for the first time, I considered giving up. Maybe I should take an office job somewhere. Maybe I should swallow my pride and ask Amanda for help. But then I thought about the seniors I'd worked with. I remembered their faces lighting up when they used MedMind, the relief in their voices when they told me they no longer had to worry about missing pills or overdosing. I couldn't let them down. Even if Amanda was right about me, I owed it to my users to keep fighting. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I tore apart my entire pitch deck, rewriting every word, every slide. I emailed everyone I'd ever met in the Boston startup community begging for feedback, for introductions, for anything. I was done letting Amanda write my story. If I went down, it would be on my own terms. And as painful as it was to admit, her cruelty had sparked a fire in me that I didn't even know I had. I was going to find a way to win, even if it broke me first. For the next several weeks, I ran on caffeine adrenaline and a simmering sense of desperation. Every morning I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, wondering if today would be the day I'd have to admit defeat. I kept replaying Amanda's words, her mocking laughter, her smug little comments, and let them drive me forward, like gasoline on a dying fire. But every pitch seemed to go the same way. The potential investors would nod politely, seem interested, and then quietly back out. Some said the market was too small. Some doubted I had the leadership presence to scale a company. One even said, "Why don't you find a co-founder? Maybe a man with more business experience." I nearly threw my laptop across the room. Every rejection cut deeper, because, with every no, I felt Amanda's voice grow stronger in my head. "You're wasting your life, Charlotte. You'll never make it." At night, I barely slept. My mind spun in circles, worrying about rent, about Shadow's vet bills, about the fact that I might have to move home with my parents, proving Amanda right once and for all. One Friday, I was invited to pitch at a local angel investor event. It felt like my last real shot. If I didn't convince someone that night, I would have to start shutting down operations. I dressed in my best black suit, hair pulled back, makeup, hiding the exhaustion under my eyes. I rehearsed my pitch until I could recite it backwards in my sleep. When I arrived, the room was filled with polished people in expensive shoes laughing over cocktails. I felt like a fraud. The MC called my name. My hands trembled as I walked on stage. The spotlight felt blinding, and the microphone seemed to pick up every shaky breath. I started strong, explaining how MedMind could save seniors' lives, how their families would have peace of mind, how insurance costs would go down if hospitals avoided medication errors. I showed testimonials from the pilot program graphs with promising retention rates, a business model I'd spent months refining. But then came the questions. A man in a blue suit with sharp eyes asked, "How much of your own money have you put into this?" I swallowed hard. All of it, I admitted. There were murmurs. A couple of people looked shocked. Another asked, "Do you have any other income or fallback?" My voice went quiet. "No. This is it." More murmurs. A third investor leaned forward, smiling a little too kindly. "So, if this fails, what will you do?" I felt like the floor was falling out from under me. My throat closed up. I don't know." They nodded, scribbling notes. It felt like a death sentence. I finished the pitch somehow. I barely remember how, and left the stage to polite applause that sounded more like pity than excitement. I stood by the back wall, gripping a glass of flat club soda, trying not to cry in front of strangers. By the end of the night, no one had made me an offer. I went home on the train, the city lights blurring through the windows. My chest felt so tight I could hardly breathe. I kept seeing Amanda's smirk in my head, hearing her tell me to take a real job. Maybe she was right. The next morning, I woke up to an email from my landlord reminding me that rent was due in 10 days. I had maybe 2 months left before MedMind ran out of money, but my personal savings were already drained. The stress was crushing me. Tara showed up that afternoon with iced coffee and a look of determination. "Okay," she said, "we are not giving up. You hear me?" I tried to protest, but she cut me off. "No, enough, Charlotte. You have built something amazing. We are going to find a way." I wanted to believe her, but I was just so tired. That night, I finally broke down. I lay on the floor of my apartment, crying harder than I ever had in my life. Shadow tried to comfort me, but I couldn't even lift my arms to pet him. Everything felt hopeless. I thought about Amanda, how she had everything I didn't. The perfect husband, the stable job, the respect of the family. Why had I tried to fight that? Why did I think I could ever measure up? For the first time, the word failure started to feel true. I remember whispering to the ceiling, "I can't do this. I can't." But somewhere deep down, a tiny spark refused to die. Because even if everyone else doubted me, even if I doubted myself, I couldn't abandon MedMind. I thought of the seniors who had trusted me, of the test users who'd cried with relief when they realized they wouldn't miss critical doses anymore. They needed this. I needed this. And so, with swollen eyes and a bruised heart, I picked myself up off the floor, opened my laptop, and started searching again for anyone who might believe in me, even if it was just one person. The next morning, with barely any sleep, I forced myself to keep going. I combed through LinkedIn, searching for angel investors I hadn't yet approached. I went back over every contact card from every startup event I'd ever attended. I cold emailed strangers with a level of shamelessness I never thought I had in me. Out of maybe 100 messages, one person replied. Her name was Eleanor Park, an investor who had made her fortune funding health tech. She agreed to a 15-minute phone call the following afternoon. I nearly dropped my phone reading her reply. That day I couldn't sit still. I paced. I rehearsed. I prayed. The whole time Amanda's voice was in my head. "You'll embarrass yourself. You'll ruin everything." I tried to block it out. When Eleanor called, her voice was calm, confident. I explained MedMind, pouring every last ounce of belief I had into that conversation. I described the seniors I'd met, the lives I wanted to help, the heartbreaking mistakes that happened when people forgot their medication. There was a long silence on the other end of the line when I finished. Finally, Eleanor said, "Meet me in person, tomorrow. Let's see if you can convince me face to face." I almost collapsed with relief. The next day, I put on my best suit again, heart hammering, and met Eleanor in a tiny cafe near Kendall Square. She was older, graceful, with sharp eyes that saw straight through me. "Tell me why you're worth betting on," she said, without any pleasantries. For a second, I froze. But then I remembered all those seniors, all those family members. I remembered the sleepless nights, the testing the code I'd written with my own hands. I took a deep breath and told her everything. How Amanda had tried to crush me. How I had nothing left. How I still refused to quit, even with 2 months of runway and no backup plan. How I believed in this project with every cell in my body. Eleanor listened stone-faced. Then she nodded as if making up her mind. "Okay," she said. "I like people who don't quit." My heart nearly exploded. She offered me a bridge investment, enough to keep MedMind alive for 3 more months, with a promise that if I could show growth, she'd bring in more partners. It felt like someone had handed me a second life. I threw myself back into work, with a fire I didn't know I still had. Tara rallied to help, volunteering hours to polish the marketing and contact local clinics to build partnerships. Eleanor introduced me to a network of health tech advisors who tore apart my business model in the best way and helped me make it stronger. But Amanda didn't stop. When she heard that I'd landed an investor, she called me up, her voice dripping with sarcasm. So you found someone to waste money on you." "Congrats, I guess," she sneered. "Call me when you need a real job." I hung up on her. For the first time in years, I refused to let her poison me. Week by week, we pushed MedMind forward. We signed up 3 community clinics for pilot partnerships. I hired 2 interns. Our active users jumped from 200 to nearly 900 in less than 2 months. Every night, I went home beyond exhausted but happier than I'd been in ages. When the quarterly review came around, Eleanor was impressed enough to bring 2 other angel investors to the table. They offered me a real seed, round enough funding to build a proper team and truly scale MedMind. I cried on that Zoom call right in front of them. I didn't even care. Amanda's voice, the one that had haunted me for so long, finally grew quiet in my mind. Because numbers don't lie. Because growth doesn't lie. Because I was winning. One evening, after we closed that funding round, I stood in my tiny apartment with Shadow and stared out at the Boston skyline. It was late, and the city was humming with light. I realized I had done it. Maybe not the traditional success my sister bragged about. No husband, no house in the suburbs, no perfect kids, but something even better. I had built a company that could truly help people, and I had done it on my own. But karma wasn't finished with Amanda yet. One weekend, about 2 years after MedMind truly took off, my parents invited the whole family to a barbecue. I hadn't seen Amanda in months. Too busy growing the company to waste time on her. When she showed up, I barely recognized her. The polished confidence was cracked just a little. The sparkle in her eyes was dimmer. Over burgers and lemonade, she pulled me aside, fidgeting. "Charlotte," she started, I heard MedMind is hiring." My eyebrows shot up. "Amanda." Coming to me for work, I didn't say anything, letting the silence speak. She rushed to explain, cheeks red. "They restructured at my company. I lost my job. I need something steady." A part of me wanted to laugh, to throw every insult back in her face. But another part of me, the part that had been burned and rebuilt piece by piece, felt only calm. I told her to send in her resume. Fair was fair. Amanda looked crushed, as if realizing she'd be applying like anyone else. But she nodded, swallowing her pride. And that night, as I watched her leave with slumped shoulders, I felt something powerful. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. The day Amanda submitted her application to MedMind, I swear the world tilted on its axis. I could barely believe it was real. The sister who'd mocked me, torn me down, told the whole family I was a pathetic loser, now sending me a polite cover letter like any other stranger. I read through her resume, trying to see her objectively. She was, after all, a solid HR manager. She had handled staffing benefits compliance, and she was qualified on paper. If I'd never known her, I might have hired her without a second thought. But of course, I did know her. I knew the way she relished humiliating me, the way she made me feel worthless, the way she'd laughed at my dreams for years. The best revenge, though, wasn't to slam the door in her face. It was to let her walk through it on my terms. When I called Amanda to schedule her interview, her voice cracked. "Charlotte, thank you," she said, trying to sound professional, but still awkward. I kept my tone measured. "We're treating every candidate fairly," I told her. "The hiring team will meet you Tuesday." Amanda showed up at MedMind's headquarters with carefully styled hair and a neutral-colored suit, clutching a notebook. She looked around the office, the same office I had fought tooth and nail to build, with a flicker of something like awe. She tried to small talk. "It's impressive, Charlotte." I nodded. "Let's get started." I didn't make the process easy. She interviewed with the entire panel just like anyone else. I sat in on the final round. Amanda answered questions well, but I could see the strain, the humiliation on her face as she realized the same little sister she'd called a loser was the CEO sitting across the table taking notes on her performance. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt strangely sad. This was my sister. Once upon a time, we'd shared a bedroom, secrets, childhood giggles. How had it come to this? After the interviews, my leadership team debriefed. Objectively, Amanda was qualified. We needed a people operations lead, and she was good at what she did. My team agreed to extend her an offer. So I did. I called Amanda back into my office, letting her take in every detail of the framed articles on my walls, Forbes, TechCrunch, Boston Business Journal. My name, over and over, as the founder and CEO. She sat down stiffly, clutching her handbag like a lifeline. "Amanda," I began, "the team has decided to move forward with you for the role." Her shoulders slumped with relief. "Thank you. Really, thank you." I held up my hand. "But I want to be crystal clear," I said, voice calm but unshakable. "This is a job. You will be treated like any other employee. I will be your boss. You will answer to me." Her eyes darted away, face flushing. "Of course." I leaned in, holding her gaze. "And I expect professionalism. That means no personal comments, no family drama, no side remarks about my private life." "Understood?" Amanda swallowed hard. "Understood." It was in that moment, seeing her nod, seeing her accept my authority, that I felt karma settle into place. I wasn't going to gloat. I didn't need to. Her having to face me every day as her CEO was the most perfect twist the universe could have handed me. Amanda started a week later. She was competent, even good at her job. She handled onboarding benefits and HR compliance as if nothing had ever happened. Most of the team didn't know she was my sister, and I didn't tell them. I let her earn her place just like everyone else. But behind closed doors, I saw the small humiliations play across her face. The way she had to knock on my door to request approvals. The way she had to address me as Charlotte with professional respect. The way she had to watch my team. The team she once laughed about treat me like a respected leader. At the company all-hands meetings, she sat quietly in the back, taking notes, while I stood in front of the entire staff guiding our future. It was the reversal of everything she once thought was true. In a way, letting her work for me was the most merciful form of revenge. She could see up close what real grit looked like. She could witness how the loser sister built something that mattered, and over time, I saw something in Amanda begin to shift. She stopped making barbed comments. She stopped rolling her eyes. Slowly, she even began offering suggestions, thoughtful and helpful, constructive. I almost didn't recognize her. One day, months into her new role, she knocked on my office door and closed it behind her. She looked nervous, hands twisting. "Charlotte," she said softly, "I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you." The words shocked me. Amanda's eyes glistened. I was wrong about everything, about you. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. That night, I lay in bed, thinking about how far we'd come. The humiliations, the heartbreak, the struggle, and the triumph that had followed. Amanda would never erase what she'd done, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to rebuild our sisterhood. I had been so focused on revenge that I didn't realize how much I wanted peace. And in that moment, I felt the final weight lift off my shoulders. Amanda's respect, earned not demanded, was the truest victory I could have imagined. 6 months after Amanda joined MedMind, I watched her walk into my office carrying the quarterly HR reports. She looked calm, focused, and for the first time, truly humble. I took the folder from her, scanning the numbers, then looked up and saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before: respect. It wasn't fear. It wasn't envy. It was genuine respect. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door and glanced back. "Charlotte," she said, voice steady, "I mean it. You built something incredible. I'm honored to be part of it." I nodded, a quiet warmth blooming in my chest. "Thank you, Amanda." She hesitated, then smiled. It was small, but it was real. When she left, I leaned back in my chair. Looking around the office, I had fought so hard to keep alive the walls lined with achievements. The hum of my dedicated team outside the quiet sense of purpose that filled the place. Shadow, my cat, now a bit older and lazier, was curled up on the windowsill, dozing in a patch of sunlight. I thought back to every time I'd cried in the dark, every insult I'd swallowed, every doubt that had threatened to break me. And then I looked at where I stood now, a founder, a CEO, a woman who had refused to bow down. Amanda had tried to crush me and instead ended up working for me. If that wasn't karma, I didn't know what was. As I gathered my notes for the next big pitch, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is just living your truth. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the people who once called you a failure might just end up thanking you for giving them a second chance. Because success, I realized, is the best kind of peace.